Business on Purpose podcast.
They're lazy. All they want to do is ride their parents' coattails, stay at home, and play video games. That's kind of the mantra, isn't it? Of maybe some of the millennials and those coming after. But I don't think it's necessarily true. Hey, it's Scott Beebe with the Business on Purpose podcast. Time to be liberated from the chaos of working in your business and get your life back. One of the biggest headaches of heroic small business owners like you is employees and having to deal with challenging employee issues. The other night, we've got a group of young men that come to our house once a week. And there's about 10 or 11, 9, sometimes 12. And then periodically we'll invite a friend of mine to come in, an older adult, to come in and just sit and visit, ask questions, share ideas, share thoughts, share realities. And this past week, we had such a visitor and did something very wise. He brought just a couple of questions. That's it. Really nothing formal. We did play a fun little challenge to where it was a card game for the entire group, and the loser had to eat the hottest hot sauce on a saltine cracker that I just have put like my pinky in it, put it to my mouth, and it was just straight pepper. And ended up throwing up. That's a whole different story. So we had a little bit of fun to go along with it. But after that, our visitor asked just a couple of questions. One of the questions was, what have you put your hope in that has let you down? And man, it was interesting to hear some of the feedback. One of the biggest pieces of feedback was school. I feel like I've put my hope in school and it's just continued to let me down. And that actually led into an entire discussion point about just the bemoaning of 6 and 7 hours of school that seemed like a lot of wasted time in the entire 8 hours it's going to be there. Now, that's a whole different discussion and what that looks like. And yet, we've got to be aware that many of the students who are coming out and they're beginning to populate our W-2 categories as employees are coming out of a school context where they got a lot of A's, but there wasn't a lot of challenge. There wasn't a lot of project-based learning. There wasn't the real push to solve interesting problems. There maybe wasn't a push for great leadership. And so they might lack those things. But instead of looking at them as lazy video game players who lack those things, instead beginning to look at them as, well, maybe these are skill sets that we can embed in them. Maybe they've got great technical capabilities, and we can begin to embed those things into them. I want to relay a couple of major points that came up from the discussion straight from the student's mouth. And this just wasn't kind of passive insight. This was a massive bomb drop to me. And so here are a couple of things. Number one, we had one of these young men say, in response to one of the other questions, that their big challenge was they did not feel like they had a great work ethic. And when I say they did not feel, that young individual himself basically said, I don't feel like I've got a great work ethic. And you could tell it wasn't a moment for the collective group of young men to start heckling him as they normally would in this situation. But they realized in that moment the seriousness of his statement. And in that moment, they listened as he repeated, yeah, I don't think I have a great work ethic, and I would like to build one. There was another student in that moment that he responded, I don't feel like I'm very good at life skills. He actually said that word. So I stopped the room and said, hey, what do you mean by life skills? His response was just problem solving and talking to adults without feeling awkward about it. And they begin to list out other things that are there. And I want us to realize as heroic small business owners, one of the great opportunities we have, now you might get frustrated with this, but that's okay. One of the great opportunities that you have, that I have, is the ability to be able to insert, to deposit life skills within these emerging millennials and Gen Z, teenage and 20-year-old men and women. We have the opportunity to be able to insert that in there. I want you to think about some very pragmatic things here. What if I created a Life 101 curriculum? What would you put in it? What would be the topics, the categories that you would lay inside such curriculum? Life 101, for instance, how to manage personal finance, what to do with credit cards, how to talk to an adult, how to go into a job interview, what to wear, what not to wear, how to use your phone, how to set boundaries around technology. What are those things that you would put in there into your Life 101 skills training curriculum that would allow a young 26-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 15-year-old to be able to grow in their capabilities so that they could take time to be a better team member with you? What would you include? So here's the question now, why don't you build it? Why don't you go ahead and build Life 101, the curriculum within your business, not only to teach to the 15-year-old and the 21-year-old, but to also teach to the 36-year-old and the 54-year-old. And what if that became a regular regiment? We've actually got a small business that they have a training meeting every week as a team. And in that training meeting, I believe it's on Thursday mornings, every fourth week of the month, they train Life 101. They teach their team members how to open a bank account. They teach their team members how to have a tough conversation with customers. It's Life 101. So what if you just took a sheet of paper, drew out some topics, laid out a simple curriculum of Life 101, and intentionally every week for 30 minutes, begin to have open, honest discussion. It doesn't have to be a monologue where you're just teaching one way, top to bottom, but it can be a dialogue, a discussion around interesting questions to solve interesting problems. And honestly, all you'd have to do is look back 24 hours or 48 hours to find some interesting problems that arise in your business, and you can solve them together. Start with a great vision. mybusinessonpurpose.com/vision. Life Skills 101. We'll see you next time right here on the Business on Purpose podcast.